Why should you get a PhD in biomedical engineering? Well, if you asked me that question a couple of years ago, I would have not had an answer for you because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But now I know the reasons for me doing my PhD in biomedical engineering is because I love science, I love research, and I want to become a professor and run my own lab. Now, I'm currently a third-year PhD student in biomedical engineering. I had quite an unconventional path to get here. So let's start all the way back at high school. Back in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was super addicted to video games. I didn't really care that much about what my career was going to become. So I ended up just kind of choosing what my parents wanted for me, and they wanted me to become a doctor. So I chose the most like Indian parent major of all time, which was biomedical engineering pre-medical. It kind of was just the longest word on the page, and I ended up choosing that. Not because I was particularly interested in it. I mean, I had general interest in science, but I guess I didn't really know what I was getting into until I started college. And I actually really enjoyed college. I did very well academically. In college, I had very, very good grades, but I still didn't exactly know where my career was going to go. I had this idea that, oh, I'm a BME pre-med. That's what the short form of that major is called. So I would do all the pre-med things and become a doctor. I had that vision in my mind, but I didn't know why I wanted to do it. I just kind of did it. I didn't really have a purpose. I was doing the classes and the volunteering and stuff just for the sake of doing it. And because of that, I got distracted by many things and kind of just tried everything under the sun. I had experiences in industry. I did a couple of different industry internships, one at Boston Scientific, a heart valve company, and one at Baxter, which is an IV company. I had some research experiences as well. And honestly, my undergraduate research experience was very valuable, but I didn't do research in undergrad with the intention of doing a PhD. And I think if I did, I would have gotten even more out of that experience. But thankfully, I had very good mentors that made my research experience very, very good. Even though I didn't exactly know why I was doing it, I just kind of had general curiosity. I also did the pre-med volunteering, things like community service. I ended up doing some physician shadowing, but I should have taken this as a sign, but I actually found shadowing as an undergrad incredibly boring. But in my mind, I just kind of thought that was something that you had to get through to get to the fun part of medicine. And I also had some experience in entrepreneurship. My school, UC Irvine, has several of these business competitions. And the idea is you come up with a business idea, you form a team, and you make a proposal, make a pitch, and you pitch it to a panel of judges, and the best pitches get awarded some money. And there are numerous competitions at the school, and there's not only competitions within the school, there's also privately held competitions outside of school. And I actually competed in this competition every single year of my undergraduate experience, and actually ended up winning the competition first place one year. Had a $10,000 grand prize. It was a pretty fun experience. Definitely something that I haven't completely kept off the radar. But that is another career path that I was looking into. And then after I graduated from college is when I really started to think about what my career was going to look like. I think it was that realization, the postgraduate realization that, oh, now I'm in the real world. Now I need to really get my life together. And that's when I started to really think about what my career was going to look like. So, again, I tried various different things. So, for the first year post grad, um, I was continuing my summer internship at Baxter. So I was working as a quality engineering intern. I, to be completely honest, I did not. I also thought that work was kind of boring. I was working on qualifying um, tools that were used to determine if components of a medical device were like up to the standard of the company. I worked on that. It wasn't really for me. I thought there was just a lot of um, documents about very trivial, in my opinion, things in the whole medical device process. I also, because I had a good relationship with my undergraduate research mentor, started my master's degree at UC Irvine in the same lab that I did my undergraduate research in. And this was a really nice thing to have because I was technically still in school while doing this internship on the side. And on top of that, I was working as an emergency department scribe at a local hospital in the area because I was still kind of going through the motions of just being pre-med because I thought that was what I was going to do. And this was the point where I really started to think about whether this was actually right for me. And my experience in the emergency room really turned me off from going into medicine. I actually did not have a good experience. Maybe it's because I was working mostly night shifts, but I didn't really like the environment of the emergency room, and I was working at an overdose hotspot, and it was just really depressing to see people shoot up, police bring them into the emergency room, you give them Narcan, and then discharge them, and they go out onto the street, shoot up again, then the police bring them back in, and it's this endless cycle of seeing the same patients over and over and over. And I honestly just was so disillusioned by the whole process. And I know that not all fields of medicine are like this, but that really turned me off from going into medicine. And then I ended up making a decision. Out of the 3 jobs that I was working at the same time, I enjoyed research by a mile the most. And all it took was really thinking about it with intention, which I should have done such a long time ago. But I mean, I had to be in this situation to get there. But that's when our school has an option of converting your master's degree to a PhD. So the process includes you have to apply for the PhD as a master's student. Then you have to get into the program, and then once you do that, then you technically do a change of degree from master's to PhD. So that's how I ended up as a PhD student in biomedical engineering. I apologize for the tangent, but the idea here is that I really just needed to find my purpose and find what exactly it is that I wanted to do with my life. And I know that word purpose gets thrown around a lot because many pre-meds that I know, at least that I interacted with as a pre-med in college, say that they want to become a doctor because they want to help people. But you can say that about pretty much any job that you want. You can become a farmer and say, I wanted to become a farmer because I want to help people. So I do think it's a lot deeper than that. I think if you want to take care and heal sick people, then you should go become a doctor. But that's not something that I wanted to do. So I ended up deciding that wasn't right for me. Now, if you want to maybe invent something or discover something that could help many people, then I would say to go into research. Now, industry is where this gets really tricky because industry is so broad. There's a million different jobs under the sun. And at the end of the day, your job really depends on the goals of your company and what role that you have in that company. My experience was I did an internship working as a manufacturing engineer. So this was all about making the manufacturing process as streamlined as possible and reducing the amount of scrap while maximizing the amount of output. Um, and my other experience in industry was as a quality engineering intern. And like I mentioned before, I was just kind of qualifying different machines and tools that we had at the company. Now, wanting to help people is the typical purpose that people cite for why they want to choose their desired career. The other one is I want to make money. So out of these three common career paths in biomedical engineering, doctors typically have the highest salary. And it makes sense because to become a doctor, you have to go through the longest training. You have to go through medical school, then you have to go through residency, and then maybe a fellowship. And then to compensate, you get the highest salary. Industry has a lower salary starting out, but there's less training, so you could get that salary much faster. Now, when you get into the PhD, the money that you can make really varies. You won't find a lot of people out there who say they want to get a PhD because they want to make a lot of money. Usually people will say that they're very passionate about the specific research that they're doing. They want to become a professor because they're passionate about teaching, or maybe they just are very passionate about research in general. But when you do a PhD, you actually have several different career paths available. You can go into industry and become an industry scientist or a research scientist. You could work in biomedical engineering, this is very broad. You can work for example, a microscope company. You can work for pharma. And these roles typically make more money than a bachelor's level engineer. But you kind of have the same problems with industry as you do as a bachelor's level engineer. You're kind of restricted to the company's goals, and it's a very common career path, I would say, in biomedical engineering. Maybe like 80+% of my cohort wants to go into industry. So it's definitely, there's a lot of appeal to it, but I would say you make good money, but you depending on the job that you get, you kind of lack in freedom. The other career path that's very common is going into research. You can become a professor and you can run your own research lab and teach. Now this typically makes less money, but once you get tenure, then you get like unlimited job security. However, this is something I wish I knew before starting my PhD, but becoming a professor is extremely competitive. Now for me, it's a dream job, so I'm still gonna go for it. But a lot of people actually don't know how competitive it is to get an assistant professor position. So just something to keep in mind. However, once you do get that kind of position, you do kind of have somewhat freedom to do the research that you want to do. The caveat is that you need to find your own funding for it. So you have unlimited freedom so long as you can obtain funding for your project. Now, the third career path that you can go into, which was definitely the least common, is entrepreneurship. Now, this is the highest risk, highest reward option. You have unlimited freedom and you have unlimited earning potential. And you can do that by starting a company based on your PhD work. Now, I've like dabbled in entrepreneurship on the side, but I won't talk too much about it because I haven't started my own company yet. But this is definitely a valid career option that is possible with your PhD. Now, there's several pros and cons of doing the PhD, and I'll be pretty quick with this. So, like I mentioned before, being a PhD student is something that I never hear from people in my circles, but the freedom that you get as a PhD student is incredible. You can pretty much, for the most part, work on whatever you're interested in working on, and you have highly flexible hours. For example, I have the flexibility to kind of go into lab whatever time in the day that I want to, so long as I actually do the work that I need to do. Many of my friends who work in computational labs, they end up working from home much of the time, which is another nice benefit to have. For me, I'm experimental, so I have to be in the lab to do my work. But I still can, as long as I do the work, I can do it whenever I want to do it, which is typically not the case in many industry jobs. And another thing, pro that I want to mention about the PhD is that something that one of my idols, Naval Ravikant, says is that all the gains in life come from compound interest. So the idea is that when you kind of like interest, right? You get interest like very slowly in the beginning, but once you continuously put more money and more money and more money, for example, let's say in like a savings account with high, or in an index fund with a high interest rate, or high returns. I said the wrong thing, but you'll only get real returns like 30, 40, 50 years down the line. That's when you've compounded so much that the gains that you get are of much higher magnitude than they are in the beginning. And that same principle applies to the PhD. So when you work on a singular project for multiple years, and oftentimes when you're just starting your PhD, you've never worked on a singular project for more than maybe like a semester for a class. So working on a single project for multiple years is an amazing experience because you can do amazing things and you'll make so much more progress than you ever thought or you ever imagined for yourself. That's a huge pro of doing the PhD, because you get paid to essentially work on whatever project it is that you want to work on for 4 or 5 years or however long it is for you. But doing a PhD also isn't perfect. There's also cons. First, it's extremely highly dependent on your PI or principal investigator. If you have a good relationship with your PI, you will have a great time in your PhD. And if you don't have a good relationship with your PI, you won't have a good time in your PhD. So that's something to keep in mind. And the other major con that people cite for the PhD is that the stipends are pretty low, especially if you're living in an expensive area like in California. So, for example, I make around, I believe it's like 30 to 40K a year, which is not great. But honestly, I think if you live lean and if you live by yourself, it's pretty nice. Obviously, this is different if you have a family, but I think as long as you're smart about your money, it is a very livable stipend, especially considering the fact that you are advancing your education and getting a degree for it. Anyway, that's why I chose to get my PhD in biomedical engineering. If you want one-on-one coaching, click the link in the description.